The chamber was cold. Yuna stood in the center of the vast room, her hands bound behind her back. Above her, 12 alien beings sat on floating platforms. They were the Galactic Council, rulers of all known worlds. Their eyes, some with multiple pupils and others glowing with strange light, stared down at her. She was small compared to them. Human, fragile-looking. Weak, they thought. The lead counselor spoke. His voice came out as a series of clicks and hums, but the translator device in Yuna's ear turned it into words she could understand. Dr. Yuna Park, you stand accused of crimes against the Galactic Order. You have refused to surrender your research. You have defied direct commands from this council. How do you plead? Yuna lifted her chin. Her dark eyes met the counselor's gaze without fear. I did what was right. A wave of anger rippled through the council. How dare this human speak to them this way? Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were young, primitive, barely worth the effort to include in galactic affairs. Another counselor leaned forward. This one had blue skin and tentacles instead of arms. You believe you know better than us? We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Your entire species is like children to us. Yuna's jaw tightened. Then children have more sense than you do. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Guards stepped forward, their weapons humming to life. But the lead counselor raised a hand to stop them. Explain yourself, human. Yuna took a breath. My research could save lives. Billions of lives across all species. I discovered something about human biology that could revolutionize medicine. But you don't want to save lives. You want to weaponize it. You want to turn healing into harm. The blue counselor's tentacles writhed. You have no right to decide what we do with your research. You are bound by galactic law. All knowledge belongs to the council. Knowledge that could be used to hurt people doesn't belong to anyone, Yuna said firmly. The lead counselor's eyes narrowed. Your species forgets its place. You think because you have ships that can travel between stars you are our equals? You are not. You are barely more than animals who learn to use tools. Yuna felt anger burn in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. If we're animals, then what does that make you? Afraid of what one animal can teach you? Silence fell across the chamber. The council members looked at each other. This human was too bold, too defiant. She needed to be taught a lesson. More importantly, all humans needed to see what happened when they challenged the council's authority. The lead counselor stood. His form was massive, towering even on the screen. Dr. Yuna Park, we find you guilty. Your sentence is exile. Yuna had expected prison, maybe even execution, but exile. Where? She asked. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a planet covered in thick green jungles. The image looked beautiful at first, but then data scrolled across the screen. Atmospheric composition, breathable but dangerous. Gravity high. Native life extremely hostile. Classification, Category 5 Death World. Krios 9, the counselor announced. A world where 3 colonies have tried to settle. All failed. Every colonist died within days. The planet's predators are the most lethal in the known galaxy. You will be given minimal supplies and dropped onto the surface. If you can survive, you may eventually be rescued. Another counselor laughed. It was a wet, gurgling sound. But no one survives Krios 9. The longest anyone has lasted is 3 days. Yuna's heart pounded. She had heard of death worlds. Planets where the entire ecosystem seemed designed to kill anything that didn't belong. Earth itself was considered a death world by many species, though only a Category 2. Krios 9 was far worse. This wasn't exile. This was execution with extra steps. Your death will be broadcast across all human colonies, the lead counselor continued. They will see what happens to those who defy us. Perhaps then humanity will learn humility. Guards moved forward to take her away. Yuna didn't resist. There was no point. As they dragged her toward the exit, she caught sight of someone in the observation gallery above. Jiho, her younger brother. He pressed his hand against the transparent barrier, his face twisted in anguish. He was shouting something, but the soundproofing blocked his voice. Yuna could read his lips, though. He was saying no, no, no over and over. She looked at him. Really looked at him. She wanted him to remember her this way, not as a victim, not as someone broken by the council's judgment. Yuna mouthed a single word to him. Survive. Jiho's eyes went wide. He shook his head frantically. He wanted to tell her that she was the one who needed to survive, not him. But Yuna knew better. If she died on Krios 9, someone needed to carry on her work. Someone needed to remember why she defied the Council. Someone needed to make sure her research, the real research hidden away where the Council couldn't find it, would eventually help people. The guards pulled her through the doorway. The last thing she saw was Jiho's face disappearing from view. They took her to a military transport ship. She was the only prisoner aboard. The crew avoided looking at her. They all knew where she was going. They all knew she would die. In her cell, Yuna sat on the hard metal bench and closed her eyes. Fear tried to claw its way up her throat, but she pushed it down. Fear wouldn't help her now. She thought about her research. Years of studying human evolution and biology, she had discovered that humans possessed unique healing factors, immune responses that could be adapted to help other species fight diseases that had plagued them for centuries. But she had also discovered that the same biology could be twisted into weapons. Viruses tailored to human DNA could be modified to target other species. That's what the Council wanted. Weapons. They always wanted weapons. Yuna had refused. She had hidden her complete research and given them only partial data, enough to seem cooperative but not enough to be dangerous. When they demanded more, she said no, and now she would die for it. The ship's engines hummed to life. She felt the vibration through the walls. They were leaving the station, heading into deep space. Heading toward Krios 9, the journey would take 5 days. 5 days to think about what awaited her. Yuna opened her eyes and looked at her bound hands. They were steady. She wasn't shaking. That was good. Fear was natural, but panic would kill her faster than any predator. She had always been good at surviving. As a child, she had grown up in a colony on the edge of human space. Life there was hard. She learned to be resourceful, to adapt, to make do with what she had. Those skills had helped her become a scientist. They had helped her survive long research missions in dangerous environments. Now they would be tested like never before. Yuna lay down on the bench and forced herself to sleep. She would need her strength. 5 days later, the ship entered orbit around Krios 9. Yuna was pulled from her cell and taken to the drop bay. They put her in a small survival pod, barely big enough for her to sit. A guard tossed a pack inside. 7 days of food, water purifier, basic knife, good luck. The way he said it made it clear he didn't think luck would matter. Another guard deactivated her translator and removed it. Council wants you to die alone. Can't have you talking to anyone. Then they sealed the pod. Yuna felt the pod detach from the ship. She was falling toward the green planet below, falling toward whatever waited for her in those jungles. Through the small window, she watched the transport ship turn and leave. They didn't even wait to see if she survived the landing. The pod shook violently as it entered the atmosphere. Heat washed over the exterior. Warning lights flashed inside. The pod was designed for emergency evacuation, not comfort. Yuna gripped the harness straps and gritted her teeth. The pod crashed through the jungle canopy. Branches snapped and broke. Then it hit the ground hard and everything went black. Yuna woke to pain. Her head throbbed. Her shoulder screamed where it had slammed against the harness. She tasted blood in her mouth. She blinked, trying to focus. The pod's interior was dark except for a few emergency lights flickering weakly. Smoke filled the air, making her cough. Move. She had to move. Yuna fumbled with the harness release. Her fingers were shaking now, but she managed to hit the button. The straps fell away and she nearly collapsed forward. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand. The pod's door was jammed. She kicked it once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th kick, it flew open and humid air rushed in. The smell hit her first. Thick, organic, alive. The smell of vegetation and rot and something else. Something dangerous. Yuna grabbed the supply pack and stumbled out of the pod. Her boots sank into soft ground covered in strange moss. She looked up and gasped. The jungle around her was like nothing on Earth. Trees stretched impossibly high, their trunks wider than houses. Vines hung everywhere, some as thick as her arm. The leaves were massive and came in colors she had never seen, deep purples and bright oranges mixed with green. Everything seemed to pulse with life. Sounds filled the air. Screeches, howls, clicking noises, things moving through the undergrowth. Things in the trees above. Yuna's heart raced. She checked the supply pack quickly. 7 meal bars, a water purifier bottle, a plasma knife which was basically a very hot blade powered by a small battery. That was it. The pod was useless now. Its systems were dead, crashed beyond repair. She couldn't call for help even if someone was willing to come. She was alone. Yuna picked a direction and started walking. She needed to find water, shelter, anything that might help her survive longer than 3 days. The gravity was heavier here than on Earth. Each step took more effort. Her muscles would adjust eventually, but right now, everything felt harder than it should. She had been walking for maybe an hour when she heard it. A sound like metal scraping on metal, but organic. It came from above. Yuna looked up just in time to see something dive toward her. She threw herself to the side. The creature missed her by inches, its claws gouging the ground where she had been standing. It landed and turned to face her. It was the size of a large dog but looked nothing like any Earth animal. It had 6 legs, a reptilian body, and wings that looked sharp enough to cut steel. Its head was mostly mouth filled with rows of needle teeth. The creature made that scraping sound again. Yuna realized it was echolocation. The thing was scanning her, figuring out exactly where she was. Then she heard more of the sounds. From multiple directions, a pack. She was surrounded by a hunting pack. Yuna pulled out the plasma knife and activated it. The blade glowed orange, humming with heat. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was all she had. The first creature lunged. Yuna slashed at it, and the blade caught its wing. The creature shrieked and veered off, crashing into the undergrowth. But 3 more emerged from the trees. Yuna ran. She crashed through the jungle, branches whipping at her face. Behind her, she heard the pack following. They were fast, so fast. Their wings helped them glide between obstacles while she had to climb and scramble. Her lungs burned. The heavy gravity made running feel like she was dragging weights, but she couldn't stop. Stopping meant death. She splashed through a stream, hoping the water would mask her scent or confuse their echolocation. It didn't work. They were still coming. Yuna's foot caught on a root. She fell hard, rolling down a slope. Dirt and leaves filled her mouth. She slid to a stop at the edge of a cliff. Below her was a drop of at least 50 feet onto rocks and more jungle. Behind her, the pack emerged from the trees. 5 of them now. They spread out, cutting off any escape route except backward off the cliff. The leader of the pack stepped forward. It was larger than the others, with scars across its body from previous fights. It made that scraping sound, scanning her. Yuna's mind raced. She thought about everything she knew about predators. On Earth, she had studied animals for years. Predators operated on instinct. They looked for prey that acted like prey, that ran, that showed fear. What happened when prey stopped acting like prey? It was a stupid idea, probably suicidal, but she was dead anyway if she kept running. Yuna stood up. She faced the pack leader. Then she screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a challenge. A roar of defiance. She beat her fist against her chest, making herself look bigger. She took a step forward, not back. The pack leader stopped. Its head tilted, confused. Yuna took another step forward. She kept screaming, kept making noise. Every animal instinct in the creature's brain was telling it that prey didn't do this. Prey ran, prey cowered. This wasn't acting like prey. The pack leader made a decision. It lunged at Yuna. She was ready. As it leaped, she didn't try to dodge. Instead, she moved into the attack, using the creature's own momentum. She grabbed its wing and twisted, redirecting its flight path. The creature went tumbling past her, right over the cliff edge. It shrieked as it fell, its wings flapping frantically. Yuna heard it hit the rocks below. The other 4 creatures froze. They stared at her, then at the cliff, then back at her. Yuna raised the plasma knife. She took another step toward them, still making herself look big and dangerous. One of the creatures made a different sound, not the scraping echolocation, but something else, a whine almost. Then it backed away. The others followed. They circled her once, keeping their distance, studying her with their strange eyes. Then, as if by some silent agreement, they turned and disappeared into the jungle. Yuna's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, shaking. Her whole body was trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. She had survived. Barely, but she had survived. For several minutes, she just knelt there, trying to catch her breath. The plasma knife fell from her hand. She stared at it lying in the dirt, still glowing faintly. She had killed a predator. She had scared off the rest of the pack. She had been on this planet for maybe 3 hours, and she was still alive. But night was coming. She could see the light fading through the thick canopy above. She needed shelter. Yuna forced herself to stand. Her legs wobbled, but they held. She picked up the knife and looked around. The cliff wasn't safe, too exposed. She needed to find somewhere defensible. She walked along the cliff edge until she found a spot where the rocks formed a small overhang. It wasn't much, just a shallow cave barely big enough for her to crawl into, but it would protect her back and sides. Yuna gathered branches and vines, piling them in front of the cave opening. It wouldn't stop a determined predator, but it might slow one down. It might give her warning. As darkness fell completely, the jungle came alive with new sounds. Things that hunted at night. Things that made noises she had never heard before. Yuna sat in her cave, the plasma knife in one hand, and watched the jungle through the gaps in her makeshift barrier. She thought about Jiho. He would have heard by now that she had been dropped on Krios 9. He was probably watching the news, waiting for the announcement of her death. She hoped he wouldn't wait long. She hoped he would start living his own life, not waiting for a sister who would never come home. Something moved in the darkness outside. Yuna tensed, gripping the knife tighter. A pair of glowing eyes appeared, reflecting what little light came from the stars above. Then another pair. Then more different creatures. Not the pack from earlier. They watched her for a long time. Yuna didn't move. She barely breathed. Finally, after what felt like hours, the eyes disappeared. The creatures moved on, searching for easier prey. Yuna let out a shaky breath. Day 1 wasn't over yet. She had to make it until morning. She forced herself to stay awake, watching, listening. Her body screamed for rest, but sleep meant death. Not yet. She could sleep when the sun came up, when she could see threats coming. The night stretched on forever. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed to hide something deadly. But slowly, gradually, the sky began to lighten. Dawn was coming. Yuna had survived her first night on Krios 9. She had beaten the odds. 3 days, they said. That was the longest anyone had survived. She intended to last much longer than 3 days. As morning light filtered through the jungle canopy, Yuna allowed herself a small smile. She was still alive, still fighting. And somewhere in the jungle, she didn't know that she was being watched. Something far more intelligent than the creatures she had encountered was studying her. Something that had never seen anything quite like her before. 6 days had passed since Yuna landed on Krios 9. She was still alive, though she barely recognized herself anymore. Her clothes were torn and stained with mud and blood, some of it hers, most of it from things that had tried to kill her. Her hair was tangled and tied back with vine. She had cuts and bruises covering her arms and legs, but she was alive. She had learned so much in those 6 days. She learned which plants were safe to eat and which would make her sick. She learned which water sources were clean and which carried parasites. She learned the sounds that meant danger and the sounds that meant opportunity. Most importantly, she learned how to hunt. Her food supplies had run out on day 4. After that, survival meant killing. She caught small creatures at first, things that moved slowly or weren't paying attention. She cooked them over small fires, using her plasma knife to start the flames. The meat was tough and tasted strange, but it kept her alive. She made better tools. She used bones from her kills to create a spear, tying a sharpened bone to a sturdy branch with vine. She made a sling from plant fibers to throw rocks. She even fashioned a crude shelter in a large hollow tree, far better than the cave she spent her first night in. Yuna was adapting. Her body was getting used to the heavy gravity. Her reflexes were sharper. She moved through the jungle with more confidence now, reading the environment like a language she was learning to speak. But she knew something was watching her. She felt it constantly, eyes on her back, a presence in the shadows. Whatever it was big and smart enough to stay hidden. On the 7th morning, she found out what it was. Yuna was hunting near a clearing when she heard a sound that made her blood freeze. It was a deep rumble. So low she felt it in her chest more than heard it. The ground trembled slightly. She hid behind a thick tree and peered around carefully. In the clearing stood the largest creature she had seen on this planet. It was easily the size of an elephant, maybe bigger. It walked on 4 massive legs, each ending in claws that dug furrows in the earth. Its body was covered in thick armored plates that overlapped like scales. A long tail swung behind it, tipped with spikes. Yuna had seen the remains of one of these creatures days ago. She called them landshakers because of the tremors they made when they walked. They were territorial and aggressive. The colonists' records had warned about them. This landshaker was injured. She could see a wound on its side, bleeding green blood that looked almost black. Something had attacked it and hurt it badly. The creature was dying, and it knew it. That made it dangerous. Wounded animals were unpredictable. Yuna was about to back away slowly when she heard another sound. A growl that made the landshaker's rumble seem quiet. From the tree line opposite Yuna, something emerged. It was built like a wolf but scaled up to horrifying size. Its shoulder was level with Yuna's head, which meant it stood at least 6 feet tall. Its body was covered in scales that looked like black glass reflecting the dappled sunlight. Its eyes glowed like molten gold. Claws as long as kitchen knives scraped the ground as it walked. Its mouth was full of teeth designed for ripping and tearing. Yuna forgot to breathe. The creature moved with deadly grace, circling the wounded landshaker. It was hunting. This was a predator, an apex predator, and the landshaker was its prey. But the landshaker wasn't going down without a fight. Despite its injury, it charged, moving with surprising speed for something so large. The wolf-like creature dodged easily. It was fast, impossibly fast for its size. It darted in and slashed at the landshaker's legs, then retreated before the tail could sweep around and hit it. Yuna watched, frozen. This was a battle between titans, and she was caught in the middle of it. Then the predator's golden eyes locked onto her. It had known she was there the whole time. The creature stopped circling the landshaker. It turned to face Yuna directly. The landshaker, confused by its attacker's sudden disinterest, stumbled and fell to its knees, too weak to continue fighting. Yuna's mind raced. Run? No, it was faster than her. Fight? With what, a bone spear against that thing? Then she understood. This wasn't an attack. It was a test. The creature wanted to see what she would do. It had been watching her for days, observing how she survived, how she hunted. Now it was presenting her with a choice. The landshaker was right there, wounded and helpless. The predator had done most of the work. All Yuna had to do was finish it, but why? Why would this creature want her to? Understanding clicked into place. This was how it communicated. Actions, not words. It was showing her that it was the alpha, the dominant predator. And it was asking if she was prey or something else. Yuna made her decision. She stepped out from behind the tree, making herself visible. The predator's eyes tracked her movement, but it didn't attack. She walked toward the landshaker, her spear gripped tight in her hand. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The landshaker's eyes rolled toward her, filled with pain and fear. It tried to rise but couldn't. Green blood pooled beneath it. Yuna had never killed anything this big before. But she understood now. This was survival. This was the way of this world. She raised her spear, aimed for where she thought the creature's heart might be, and drove the weapon down with all her strength. The landshaker shuddered once and went still. Yuna pulled her spear free, breathing hard. She had done it. She had brought down a creature 10 times her size, but she knew better than to claim the kill. She stepped back, away from the body, and looked at the predator. She lowered her head slightly, not in submission, but in respect. This was its kill. She had just helped finish it. The predator watched her for a long moment. Then it moved forward, massive paws making no sound on the ground despite their size. It stopped beside the landshaker's body. Then it did something that made Yuna's eyes widen in shock. It lowered its head to her, not just looking down, but actually bowing its massive skull toward her. It was showing respect. From the trees around the clearing, more shapes emerged. More of the wolf-like creatures, though none as large as the first one. There were 5 of them, all watching Yuna with those golden eyes. They were a pack, and the big one was their alpha. One by one, each of the other creatures lowered their heads to her. The gesture was unmistakable across any species. Recognition. Acceptance. Yuna felt tears sting her eyes. She didn't understand exactly what was happening, but she knew it was important. These creatures, these apex predators that killed everything else on this planet, were treating her as an equal. The alpha made a sound, a deep rumble that was almost soothing. It wasn't threatening. It was almost welcoming. Yuna took a cautious step forward. The alpha didn't move. She reached out slowly, her hand trembling, and touched the scales on its head. They were warm and surprisingly smooth. The Alpha's eyes closed briefly, accepting her touch. A bond was forming. Yuna could feel it. Something primal and ancient. Something that went beyond species or language. On Earth, thousands of years ago, humans had done something no other species had. They had befriended wolves. They had turned dangerous predators into companions, into dogs. It had changed both species forever. Maybe that same instinct was at work here. Maybe humans were just built to form packs with predators. Maybe that was their real strength. Not fighting alone, but finding allies in unexpected places. The Alpha turned toward the Landshaker's body. It tore a chunk of meat from the creature and dropped it at Yuna's feet. An offering. A share of the kill. Yuna picked it up. It was still warm. Thank you, she said, even though they couldn't understand her words. The gesture mattered more than language. The pack began to feed on the Landshaker. They didn't fight over the food. Each creature took its share in an orderly way, with the Alpha eating first, then the others. Yuna watched and waited. When they seemed finished, she approached and carved off some meat for herself using her plasma knife. The pack watched but didn't object. She had been accepted. As the sun began to set, the Alpha made another sound. The pack rose and began to move away from the clearing. The Alpha looked back at Yuna, waiting. It wanted her to follow. Yuna grabbed her supplies and the meat she had carved. She followed the pack into the jungle. They moved through the darkening forest with perfect coordination. Yuna struggled to keep up with their pace, but they slowed down for her, adjusting their speed so she wouldn't get lost. They led her to a massive cave system built into a cliff face. Inside, the cave opened up into a huge cavern. Other pack members were there, including younger ones that looked at Yuna with curious golden eyes. The Alpha settled down on a raised section of rock. It looked at Yuna and made a gesture with its head toward a spot near it. Yuna understood. She was being given a place in the pack, a place of honor, near the Alpha. She set down her supplies and sat. For the first time since landing on this planet, she felt something other than fear. She felt safe. Around her, the pack settled down for the night. Some groomed each other. The young ones played, tumbling over each other. It was almost peaceful. Yuna looked at the Alpha. I don't know if you can understand me, she said quietly. But thank you. You saved my life today. The Alpha's golden eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. It made a soft rumbling sound and closed its eyes. Yuna smiled. She leaned back against the cave wall, and for the first time in 7 days, she let herself truly rest. 3 months had passed since Yuna joined the pack. She was no longer the same person who had crashed onto Krios 9. Her body was lean and muscled now, adapted to the heavy gravity. Her skin was tanned from the sun and marked with scars that told stories of survival. She moved through the jungle with the confidence of a predator, not prey. She had learned to communicate with the pack, not through words, but through sounds and gestures. They had their own language of growls, rumbles, and body movements. Yuna couldn't speak it perfectly, but she understood enough. The Alpha, whom she had named Taiyang because his golden eyes reminded her of the sun, had become her constant companion. Where she went, he followed. Where he hunted, she joined. The pack had taught her their ways. She learned to hunt larger prey, to work as a coordinated team. She learned to read the jungle's signs, to know when danger was near and when it was safe to rest. In return, she taught them things they had never seen before. She showed them how to use tools, how to plan ambushes using strategy instead of just instinct. She introduced concepts that her human brain could conceive, but their minds adapted too quickly. They learned from each other, and the pack became stronger for it. One day, while exploring further from the cave than usual, Yuna discovered something that changed everything. It was a building, or what was left of one. The structure was half buried under vines and vegetation, but she recognized it immediately. Human construction. This was one of the old colony buildings from when people tried to settle Krios 9. Taiyang growled softly beside her, wary of the strange structure. It's okay, Yuna said, placing a hand on his head. This is from my kind. Let's look inside. She pushed through the vines covering the entrance. Inside, everything was dark and covered in dust. Equipment lay scattered and broken. Skeletons in tattered colony uniforms told the story of how the settlement ended. Yuna felt sad looking at them, but she kept moving. If there was anything useful here, she needed to find it. In what looked like the main operations room, she found computers. They were old and damaged, but one terminal still had a faint emergency power light blinking. Her hands shook as she tried to activate it. After several attempts, the screen flickered to life. Data began scrolling across the display. Colony logs, research notes, and recordings. Yuna spent hours reading through everything. What she learned made her angry and excited at the same time. The colonists hadn't been killed by mindless beasts. They had been killed because they treated Krios 9 like property to conquer. They hunted the native creatures for sport. They burned sections of jungle to make room for buildings. They poisoned water sources. The creatures of Krios 9 had fought back, and they had won, but there was more. Research notes indicated that the pack creatures, the ones Yuna now lived with, showed signs of intelligence. Tool use, complex social structures, problem-solving abilities. The scientists believed they might be sapient, as smart as humans or close to it. The colonists had been trying to study them when everything fell apart. Yuna sat back, processing this information. Taeyang and his pack weren't just animals. They were intelligent beings. She had suspected as much, but having it confirmed was different. She scrolled through more files and found something else. The colony's communication system. It was damaged, but maybe, just maybe, she could repair it. If she could get it working, she could send a message. She could let people know she was alive. More importantly, she could tell Jiho she was okay. Yuna looked at Taeyang. "I need to stay here for a while," she told him. "I need to fix this machine." Taeyang tilted his head, not understanding the words but reading her intent. He settled down near the entrance, keeping watch while she worked. For days, Yuna labored over the communication system. She salvaged parts from other equipment. She used knowledge from her years studying technology. Slowly, piece by piece, she rebuilt what was broken. Other pack members came and went, bringing her food and water. They seemed to understand this was important to her, even if they didn't know why. Finally, after a week of work, the system powered up. Yuna's hands flew over the controls. She encoded a message, routing it through old satellite relays still in orbit. She had no idea if anyone would receive it, but she had to try. The message was simple and coded in a way only Jiho would understand, using references from their childhood that no one else would know. "Little brother, the sun rises on the Deadworld. I run with family now. Tell them humanity doesn't break. We adapt, we bond. We survive. Tell them we're coming." She sent the message and waited. Days passed with no response. Yuna began to think it hadn't worked. Then, 2 weeks later, the system beeped. An incoming signal. She rushed to the terminal. It was from Jiho. His message was brief, likely afraid it would be intercepted. "Sister, the galaxy heard you're alive. Humans are refusing council orders. They want to know how you survived. Council is panicking. They're sending ships to Krios 9 military forces. They can't let your survival become a symbol. You have 3 weeks, maybe 4. I'm sorry. I love you." Yuna read the message 3 times. Then she saved it to a data chip and shut down the system. The council was coming to finish what they started. They would bring soldiers and weapons. They would kill her and probably sterilize the entire planet to erase any evidence of her survival. She had a month to prepare for war. Yuna returned to the cave where the pack lived. She called for Taeyang and the other senior pack members. She couldn't explain everything to them, but she could show them. Using dirt and rocks, she created a simple model. Small stones represented the pack. Larger stones represented enemies coming from above. She demonstrated how the large stones would attack, how they would try to destroy everything. Taeyang watched carefully. His golden eyes narrowed. The other pack members growled, understanding the threat even if they didn't understand the specifics. Yuna pointed to herself, then to them, then to the model. Together. They would face this together. Taeyang made a deep rumbling sound. It echoed through the cave. From deeper in the cave system, more pack members emerged. Yuna realized for the first time just how large the pack truly was. There weren't just the dozen or so she saw regularly. There were dozens more, maybe over 100. This wasn't just a pack. It was a nation. Over the next weeks, Yuna prepared. She explored the old colony ruins and salvaged what she could. Weapons that still worked. Armor plating. Old defense systems that might be repairable. She also studied the jungle, looking for advantages. She found places where the terrain could be used against invaders, caves that could serve as ambush points, areas where the natural predators were most active. The pack helped. They showed her secret paths through the jungle. They demonstrated how they coordinated during hunts. Yuna adapted these tactics, thinking about how to use them against armed soldiers. She also sent more messages to Jiho, each one carefully coded. She told him what she was planning. She told him to spread the word among human colonies. Let them know that one human stood against the council on the deadliest world in the galaxy, and she wasn't alone. Let humanity see that they didn't have to bow to the council's authority. Jiho's responses came back with news from across the galaxy. Human colonies were refusing to cooperate with council mandates. Human ships were forming informal alliances. The council's authority was cracking, all because one woman survived where she was supposed to die. The 3 weeks passed quickly, then 4. Then Yuna received a final message from Jiho. They're coming. Fleet left 2 days ago. 3 battle cruisers, 1,000 soldiers. The commander is named Vex. He's ruthless. He'll use orbital weapons if he can't take you on the ground. Everyone is watching. Humanity is watching. Show them what we can be. I love you, sister. Make us proud. Yuna stood on a cliff overlooking the jungle. Taeyang stood beside her, his massive form radiating strength. Behind them, the pack waited. Over 100 apex predators, all ready to defend their home and their strange furless pack member. In the sky above, Yuna could see the first signs of ships entering orbit. Bright streaks of light against the stars. She placed her hand on Taeyang's head. They think this is a dead world, she said quietly. They think we're weak. They're about to learn the truth. Taeyang rumbled in response. It almost sounded like agreement. The council wanted to make an example of her, to show humanity what happened when they defied galactic authority. But Yuna had a different lesson to teach. She would show them that humanity didn't conquer or dominate. They adapted. They survived. They made allies in the strangest places. They turned death worlds into homes, and they never ever gave up. The ships in orbit began their descent. Yuna could see landing craft separating from the larger vessels heading toward the surface. She smiled, fierce and wild. Let them come. This dead world was about to come alive. The landing craft hit the ground like falling stars. 30 ships spread across the jungle, each carrying elite soldiers from different council species. They wore advanced armor and carried weapons designed to level cities. Inside the command ship, Vex watched his tactical display with satisfaction. He was a tall, insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw in multiple spectrums. He had crushed rebellions on 6 worlds. 1 human would be easy. All units spread out and search, he commanded. Target is a single human female, likely starving and desperate. This should take less than an hour. The soldiers moved out into the jungle with confidence. They had training, technology, and overwhelming numbers. What could one exile do against 1,000 trained warriors? They were about to find out. The first squad moved through dense undergrowth, their sensors scanning for heat signatures. Their leader, a stocky alien with gray skin, held up a hand to signal a stop. Something ahead, he muttered. Large heat signature, but the readings are strange. They moved forward cautiously. In a small clearing, they found a body. One of Krios 9's predators, the 6-legged flying creatures, lay dead with a crude spear through its heart. It's fresh, the squad leader said. She was here recently. Spread out and... The trees exploded with movement. Black shapes burst from the foliage. The pack attacked with coordinated precision. Taeyang led the charge, his massive form crashing into the squad leader and crushing him instantly. Other pack members took down soldiers before they could raise their weapons. The squad's screams echoed through the jungle. Then silence. In the command ship, Vex watched the first squad signals blink out on his display. All 6 members gone in seconds. What happened? He demanded. Unknown, sir. We lost contact before they could report. Vex's compound eyes narrowed. Send 3 squads to investigate. And tell them to stay alert. The 3 squads found the clearing. What they found there made even trained soldiers hesitate. Bodies everywhere. Armor torn open like paper. Weapons scattered and broken. And in the center, written in the dirt with something's claw, was a message in the common galactic language. Leave. One soldier took a picture and sent it back to the command ship. Vex stared at the image. Impossible. The predators here are animals. They can't write. His tactical officer spoke up nervously. Sir, what if the target has allied with the native creatures somehow? The colonists' records mentioned unusual pack behavior. Nonsense, Vex snapped. Humans can't communicate with alien animals. Continue the search. All units weapons free. Kill anything that moves. But the jungle had become a nightmare for the soldiers. Yuna and the pack were everywhere and nowhere. They used the terrain perfectly. They struck from ambush, killed quickly, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Soldiers fired at shadows. Their sensors were useless in the dense jungle. The heat signatures were too many to track. The natural sounds masked approaching predators. Squad after squad went silent on the tactical display. Yuna moved through the trees like she had been born there. She no longer needed technology to survive here. The jungle was her home, and she knew every path, every hiding spot, every advantage it offered. She watched from cover as another squad stumbled into one of her traps. Vines she had rigged suddenly pulled tight, hoisting 2 soldiers into the air where they hung helpless. The pack emerged and finished them before the others could react. The remaining soldiers ran only to find themselves separated in the dense undergrowth. Alone, they were easy prey. Yuna had learned something the Council never understood. Technology was powerful, but it had limits. Soldiers trained in facilities could never match someone who lived and breathed survival every day. She signaled to Taiyang with a series of clicks she had learned to make. He responded with a low rumble and led half the pack toward another squad's position. The coordinated attacks continued for hours. In the command ship, Vex watched his forces dwindle from 1,000 to 800 to 600. His confidence was crumbling. "Sir, we need to pull back," his tactical officer urged. "Whatever she's doing, it's working. We're losing too many soldiers." Vex's mandibles clicked in anger. "No, we have orbital weapons. If ground forces can't handle one human, we'll burn this entire planet from space." "But sir, the Council wanted her captured. The Council wanted her dead." Vex roared. "And that's what they'll get. Prepare the orbital cannons. We'll sterilize this jungle section by section until nothing remains." In the jungle, Yuna heard the ship's engines powering up. She had expected this. She had planned for it. Weeks ago, when she first repaired the colony's communication system, she had done more than send messages. She had accessed the old defense network. The colonists had installed orbital defense satellites to protect their settlement. They were old and damaged, but Yuna had spent days repairing what she could remotely. Now it was time to see if her work paid off. She pulled out a salvaged control pad and entered commands. In orbit, ancient satellites came to life. Their targeting systems locked onto the Council fleet. Vex was giving the order to fire when his ship shook violently. Alarms blared. "Sir, we're under attack. Defense satellites, they're active." "That's impossible. Those systems are decades old." The satellites fired again. Beams of concentrated energy struck the battlecruisers. One ship's shields failed and the beam punched through its hull. Explosions rippled across its surface. "Evasive maneuvers," Vex shouted, but the satellites were coordinated, firing in patterns designed to force the ships into predictable paths. A second battlecruiser took critical damage. In the jungle, Yuna allowed herself a smile. She had bought more time, but she knew the satellites wouldn't last long. They were too old, too damaged. The ships would eventually destroy them. She needed to finish this on the ground. Yuna made a decision. She activated the communication system one final time and broadcast on all frequencies, making sure every human colony in the galaxy could hear. "My name is Yuna Park. The Council sent me to die because I refused to give them weapons. They wanted to show humanity the price of defiance. But I didn't die. I survived. I made allies where they saw only monsters. I built a home where they saw only death." In the command ship, Vex heard her voice over the communication systems. His forearms trembled with rage. "You think surviving makes you special?" he broadcast back. "You're one human on a rock in space. You can't win." "You're right," Yuna replied calmly. "I can't win. But I don't have to. I just have to survive long enough for everyone to see the truth." "What truth?" "That humanity doesn't need your permission to be equals. That we can thrive anywhere, even on death worlds. That we make friends with the monsters you fear. You wanted to teach humanity a lesson, Vex. You did. You taught us we don't need you." Across the galaxy, on every human colony, people watched and listened. They saw footage from Yuna's transmission showing her standing beside Taiyang, surrounded by the pack. They saw a human who had conquered the unconquerable. They saw hope. On Earth, in crowded city centers, millions gathered to watch. Jiho stood among them, tears streaming down his face, pride overwhelming him. His sister was alive. More than alive, she was winning. In the council chambers, the other counselors watched in horror as their authority crumbled in real time. Human colonies were openly refusing orders. Human ships were ignoring council mandates. The lead counselor contacted Vex directly. "End this. Offer her terms. We cannot allow this situation to continue." Vex wanted to refuse, wanted to burn the planet and be done with it. But he saw the situation clearly. If he killed Yuna now, she would become a martyr. Humanity would never forgive the Council. He had already lost Dr. Park, he broadcast. "The Council offers you a full pardon. You'll be granted a seat as humanity's first true representative. Krios 9 will become a protectorate under your authority. The attacks will cease immediately." In the jungle, Yuna looked at Taiyang. The massive predator's golden eyes met hers. She placed her hand on his head. "The pack stays with me," she said. "Krios 9 remains free. No colonization, no exploitation. The creatures here are intelligent and deserve recognition as a sapient species. Those are my terms." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then, agreed. The remaining soldiers were recalled to their ships. The fleet prepared to leave orbit. But before they left, Vex had one final question. "How did you do it? How did you survive when everyone else died?" Yuna smiled. "Because I didn't try to conquer this world. I learned to be part of it. I adapted. That's what humans do best. We adapt, we bond, we survive. You should have remembered that before you exiled me here." The fleet departed. The skies above Krios 9 cleared. Yuna stood on the cliff where she had waited for the invasion. Taiyang beside her, the pack gathered around them. She had won. Not through strength or weapons, but through something the Council could never understand. Through cooperation, through respect for other forms of life. Through humanity's unique ability to make allies anywhere. Months later, Yuna walked into the Galactic Council chambers for the second time. But now she wore robes of office, not prisoner's clothes. Taiyang walked beside her and no one dared object. He was recognized as an ambassador for his species, equal to any council member. She took her seat among the 12 counselors. Now there were 13. Jiho watched from the gallery, his heart full of pride. Other humans filled the observy.